Welcome to the Fire from Two Windows podcast, where we take a deep dive into different aspects of the fire service. My name is Matt Humnicki, and I am joined with my co-host Lou Cominelli. We want to express that these are our own opinions built by experiences and education while honing our craft. These are not the opinions nor directions from our various employers. We are here on our own to spur conversation and help level the playing field for all. Morning, Lou.
Morning, Matt. How are you?
I'm good. What's new?
Marathon overtime coming to an end. Vacation coming up.
Coming to an end. Yeah, you kind of been hitting it, picking up a shift, it seems like almost every day of the week for a while.
It's all right. Caught a local job the other day, so we're all good with that.
We will get to that one. I think right now I got a little bit of a lull, and then coming into next month, it's somehow I got locked into a whole bunch of shit. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But between, I don't even know what's causing it. We have a few people out, but it's mostly good outs. We had a couple people have some new members of their family, so that created a couple vacancies in the shift schedule. But that's a good problem to have. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
All right, let's roll right into it. You got something on the PFAS?
No, I was just talking to our union vice president. They went to a conference the other day, and they're saying that they got legislation, at least at the New York State level, it sounds like, that New York State is going to eliminate PFAS from our turnout gear. I think he said 27, might be 28. What kind of baffles me that it's 2025. My father came into the fire service wearing the rubber coats, and then he was one of the first guys in the district to buy his own turnout gear, like personal turnout pants and coat. I wonder what they made it out of back then. He still got it hanging in his office. I like to look at what's in that.
It's just lead
right.
line.
But now, I think they were just wool back then, just heavy wool coats. I don't know
what that.
But we're in 2025, and how long's a cancer initiative been pushed on us?
I know. So when I first started the fire service, it was talked about, but it wasn't about the equipment giving us cancer. It was just what we were exposed to.
Right. And then we find out, in not too short of a time frame, that the gear that we're putting on has cancer in it. Now, I am not an expert in this. There's way more people out there that are way smarter than me regarding this. But it's troublesome that the gear that we're told to wear on a day-to-day basis, fresh out of the package, has cancer-causing agents in it. And I know we talked about this like on we did a health and fitness one way early on. We kind of debated whether working out in your gear was good or not. And I'm indifferent on it. I see the benefits of it, but exposing yourself to the carcinogens, the PFAS that are in it, why would I want to do that?
I think it was, if I had to venture a guess, it was the next thing that we tend to always put the cart before the horse, and that's like a human thing to do. We come up with something new, something good. We don't have long-term testing for a lot of things, but there's a need now. So we take an educated guess, and sometimes we guess wrong, and we put it in practice. That's a very, very general statement right there, but you could pick anything. Pick any industry out there, and you're going to find that.
Right. It's just bothersome that we do all this stuff, try to eat healthy, you try to work out, you decon at scene. We have the decon wipes. We have the special soap in the showers for after a job. It's got the activated charcoal. The soap is jet black, and then it seems like that all is for nothing, because the gear you put on for the automatic alarm to go investigate, it's going to give you cancer anyways. Talking to one of the guys on on my group, his cousin is a Boston fireman, and he was saying that some of the surrounding departments around Boston, and maybe even Boston, are going to 3/4 boots for smells and bells calls to to shy away from exposing yourself to PFAS. I haven't confirmed that, but it's kind of a, you're taking a step back in time almost to, you're, instead of bunker pants and normal leather boots, they're putting on 3/4 length boots to do a gas call, so they're not exposed to the PFAS. I said I haven't confirmed it, but
Isn't it kind of wild? And this isn't the first time we've seen, this type of, not behavior, but this type of modification, like reaction to something, and then we switch over. A couple years ago was the foam. Is foam good for you? Is it, what is it for? And I'm not going to get into foam operations. There's a lot of arguments out there. Do we use it? Yes, use it on everything. No, don't use it at all. This is bad for the environment. This is good. But we've seen this before with foam specifically. We came up with the concept that if we lay this down, the classic mistake is that it makes water wetter. And that really has to do with saponification. But there's still departments that use foam because either they still have it in stock somewhere. It's starting to go outdated. Hey, let's get rid of it before, because there's really nowhere to put it. But it turns out that a lot of PFAS was one of the chemicals in kind of the major player. And for those listening on this, that's your polyfluoroalkyl substances, group of chemicals used in consumer products and industrial processes that they're super toxic. They build up in your bloodstream. They hang around in your body for a long time, and it's bad. It's bad shit, right? It cancer causing, you name it. Bad for your thyroid, for your hormones, everything. I don't personally know of anybody who can link something directly to PFAS, but we hear it thrown around all the time. Same thing with the foam. However, you can't just get away from foam altogether. Think of ARF support units. So anybody that's at an airport or near an airport that might have ARF capabilities, they have to go flow foam X amount of times a year just by FAA regulations. So you have EPA regulations that saying, hey, don't put this stuff in the drain or don't put this on the ground. You have FAA saying you must, it's like how DEC gets involved. You have all these different agencies, letter group agencies that say, do it, don't do it, never do it, get rid of it, buy more. So then they came out with a couple products which to me felt very, very fast and rushed, of this green foam, they were calling it. What the hell is green foam? It doesn't have PFAS in it. Okay, well, what does it have? Is it just Dawn dish soap that we're diluting a little bit and calling it a day? That's essentially the same thing as saponification. It has to do with the water surface tension. But I'm guessing we're not throwing Dawn dish soap. If it's good for the ducks, it's good for fire. That's never been a saying. We're not throwing that on fires and gasolines and,
This brings me back to it. It was an old Instagram post. I saw this guy, the same. It's good for ducks. It's good for fire. And then one of those, like, I don't know what company it was, so I'm not going to say it. They came back and they're like, well, if you look at the ingredients of Dawn dish soap, it has cancer-causing agents in it as well, so you shouldn't be using it either.
There's PFAS in cleaning agents as well. Even, personal products, personal hair products, soaps, all sorts of cleaning agencies that would be in your home that may be other than, like, it's not just your bleaches and stuff like that. It's stuff you're using in the shower, But you got another chemical like BPAs that, we kind of did this. It was in the background. It felt more like in society in general, not just in the fire service. But if you look at like all plastic containers now, they say BPA free. They want BPA free. I'm taking their word for it that it's BPA free. I don't know what it is until you said it's BPA free.
Right. Well, now you can't even use plastics because of everybody's worried about microplastics.
Yeah. And that's part of this, the PFAS, PFAS. They are found, there was just one of the Journal of Medicines had an article. I think I was reading it last weekend, so I can't remember when it was published, but I was reading it last weekend because it popped up, and they had a cadaver, and they checked the brain, and they found it was like a tablespoon of plastics and PFAS, chemicals. They're combined in the brain. They were able to dilute it, or not dilute it, but work it down and find this volume inside the human brain. It was a random selection.
Yeah.
Okay, now we come to this thing. You're telling us we got all these PFAS in our gear. Well, we need something, something to protect ourselves. What do we select and how? And how do we as the end users know? And how can we turn to our bosses or our suppliers and say, hey, we want X, Y, and Z, not A, B, and C because it has PFAS. And be like, hey, this doesn't have PFAS. Well, what's in that thing then?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Hopefully the unions have keep an eye on it of what's going in that gear. And it just seems like everything and anything that's being manufactured now has some sort of bad stuff in it, and you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And it's almost like what's the lesser of two evils? Is you have to wear your gear. There's no there's no way around it.
Yeah.
Unless you're a police officer going into a fire and rescuing somebody,
Let's
then you
let's
don't have
not
to
go
then you don't
down
have to
that
wear
road.
gear.
But when you look inside the gear, I remember seeing the very first set of turnout gears that I had. I think it was Globe, and I'm not selecting it because I think it's a great product or I'm not advertising the product. I just remember it was the first set of gear. When you look inside, there was that little warning sticker. It's on every single gear, and it said, "This is firefighting is inherently or ultraviolet." Ultra hazardous to the human health. Like that's the only place you'll see ultra hazardous,
Right.
you know, because they have to put that. So you got going back to the letter agencies, you have like OSHA that says, hey, you can't fight fire. That's endangering the human life. Well, then there's a service that does fight fire. How do you select that industry and say, oh, but we need to create an exception? So then we create these other sets of rules through other governing bodies, and it boils down. So we keep taking this best stab at it in the dark, and each time we go, we poke a different hole, not realizing we're creating a sieve in the long run. So what's going to be the next thing that comes out?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with it. Who knows? Maybe they won't be. I mean, they might be say, yeah, turnout gear is not going to be rated, and that's the one thing I'm worried about is if the gear was manufactured with PFAS and that had to do with our rating, like the TPP rating and all the other ratings that go into the gear. If you take the PFAS out of it, what is it losing? I don't know. It's just a
I
question
don't know.
question I'm asking. Is the gear going to be worse? Are we not going to be able to do our job as efficiently as possible? Or are we not going to be able to do what we used? Is it's going to be interesting to see in a couple of years if this legislation goes through. And it might have already went through. I'm not sure if it did or didn't. But
I don't know. I just heard about it. I learned it the other day as well, or 2 nights ago. And looking at it from a different perspective, when you put something out there like a bill in legislation, it's passed. That's one step of the process. But if you put down anywhere as a rule that says you shall or you must, not use this stuff, if you don't provide an alternative, you're kind of hanging that up to every department out there now is responsible for selection process of gear. So if you say, hey, no more PFAS, but the next thing is super expensive, think of all the departments that are out there, especially, across the nation. You can pretty much any smaller town, there's always people willing to help. There may not be a lot of people, but every community has some sort of firefighting apparatus, not just the rig, but the community itself. So you have this little department, and now you're telling them that, oh, sorry, you have to go with this expensive option. Where are they getting that money? Funding, we know what funding's like these days, and they can't just ask the next person to pay their bill. So you're kind of always boiling it down to your community to pitch in fives at the door and pay for this stuff.
and
To balance that.
you bring up a great point, and I know this is like a nationwide incentive that the internationals taken charge of. But let's say this goes into effect in our state first, and it's not federal yet. So that means the
Mm-hmm.
manufacturers are going to be still manufacturing gears with PFAS in it. And the gear we have to purchase in our state, how much more expensive is that gear going to be compared to the rest of the nation?
I imagine it would, if it's only one state that has a very specific need, that's going to be quite costly. And it may be the material, but it could also be the manufacturing process. You know, you have an
Right.
assembly line that can churn out a little bit for everybody, but then you have to create an entire assembly line just for one state. Yeah, you're paying extra for that.
Yeah. It's it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting, like with the budget lines for departments. You know, with the like smaller volunteer departments that they
Hmm.
their budget line is very stringent. They can only spend so much money, and it might be just based on how much they bring in on their fundraisers.
Yeah,
You know
there's only
what?
so many euchre tournaments you can hold and chicken
Yeah,
dinners and
yeah.
things of that nature to help supplement it. You know, even those
Hopefully,
chicken dinners are getting out. You know, it's funny because like where we live, the
yeah,
next town over does them, and you see the sign. They have the same sign every year, and they slap a new. It's so thick from the stickers where they have to change the
yeah.
prices every year.
Well, even when the Boy Scouts do the one across from headquarters, those have gone up. I mean, I remember they were like five, six, $7 for a chicken
Yeah,
dinner. Now they're like $16 for
yeah,
a chicken.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
crazy. It's wild. Yeah, I don't know the answer, but I do know that there's one problem. We're trying to solve the first step in the problem. We have to make sure we do the due diligence, not just as us, but the people that are also representing us, and if we have any part in that representation, to kind of also factor in how's this play for everybody. You know, a
Ho-
department that might be able to afford some shit, you know, afford some stuff. Okay, you're still adding an expense, but don't forget it's not like we're churning out extra widgets this week to cover that cost. You know, no matter which way you write it, you're asking some form of taxes to pay for that.
hopefully, there's some grant money out there with some of the money that they're saving now that they can move over to PPE grant money. Might be a good way of offsetting it.
Hopefully, you know, I mean, that's still that grant money's still coming from somewhere though.
Yeah,
You know, it's not a bunch of it's not like they're holding the gala somewhere and rich people are
right.
paying $400, $1,000 a plate. You know, so that's about PFAS in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. See, I mean, I know there's a lot of social media accounts that are hitting hard on it. There's a lot of there's a few good social media like businesses that have their accounts that are big on the decon and stuff like that. But I mean, this PFAS thing came to the highlight after that. I would call it a landmark study that they did with the. We talked about it earlier, where
Hmm.
they tested the gear and their control test still was showing PFAS was still the cancer in them. Eh, it sucks that it shouldn't say it, this job is still the greatest job in the world. And when you get on, it's like just because of the hazards of the job, you have that likely chance of coming down with cancer. I don't even know what the percentage is, but it just sucks that the gear that you have to wear is also giving you cancer at the same time. And it's like we lose lose situation. It seems like. Well, hopefully they're
Right.
making it better. Um, some other news. Um, Shifting gears. We really don't talk about this on here. I mean, we talk about everything on here. But I was. Do you listen to Sean Ryan's podcast at all?
I do a little bit, a little bit. I started picking it up a couple months back, and you know, if I'm out of my other ones, I kind of it's one of the ones I throw in the I throw in the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, they're it's long form. I mean, some go 4 hour. I think the one I'm listening to right now with the Air Force pilot who was also an astronaut is 4+ hours. But he's had a CIA former CIA targeter on. Her name is um, Sarah Adams,
Adams, yep.
and I remember listening to the one before the new year, and I'm not saying she predicted the exact attack that happened in New Orleans, but she pretty much predicted that something was going to happen along that point. And the last one they came out with, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago, they had a couple other people on, and they're saying that there's going to be an attack again, and it's not going to be able to. The first responding agencies are not going to be able to handle it. And when I say first responding agencies, the police aren't going to be able to handle the what type of attack it is. The fire department's not going to be able to handle it because one, they're not going to be able to get to the scene to mitigate it, and then there's going to be too many patients for the local EMS to even triage. What's scary is that through significant others that we know, there's been some communications throughout the local hospitals kind of ramping up security and doing threat assessments for the local hospitals. It's going to be
So
interesting.
this is coming from, like, we're talking, we'll say the words domestic terrorism, but it's also a preparedness thing for anything that can happen. It's the nature of the world these days, and it's the preparedness level to get buy-in from everybody across the board. So whether it's people actually at works, at jobs, so you have hospitals, police stations, fire departments, state agencies, county agencies, all the way on up, but it also is your community as a whole, and keeping an eye on that stuff, being prepared for essentially the worst, but not in a sense that it's like, hey, everybody, be scared all the time. We're
I
not
mean,
telling everybody shelter in place until, nothing ends up happening.
just look at what happened over the weekend. They had that the local, I would call him a town crier, the guy on the AM station that's got
Yep.
that big following on X. He posted the event RSVP website for the Tesla takedown that was in the town to the south of us, and then the the firewire for our county reposted it as well. It was good for situational awareness for the fire department, but that Tesla um, building, I guess, is more of a service center. And then when they showed the news on it, it was just kind of a bunch of, I wouldn't say dangerous people, but they were just kind of people standing off the side of the road with their signs. They weren't doing what they did in Vegas or out in California, like, you know, ruining cars or, being violent. They were just out there
Mm.
practicing their First Amendment right, protesting whatever they want to do. But could that have turned violent? And we've now we got a Tesla building on fire. It could have. There's Teslas that drive all over the place here. That's another one of these domestic. It's right now it's vandalism, I guess. They're not really calling it domestic terrorism. Some people want to call it domestic terrorism. It is what it is. But all this, it's like we're in a powder keg right now, and
Yeah. It,
the the,
it
fu-
definitely feels like that.
the fuse is getting shorter. But it's good for situational awareness for us. Yeah, what target hazards do we have? What soft target hazards are in your community? And your fire department should be doing these threat assessments, because when I got on the job, it's going to be 18 years as a paid fireman in September, and at 20 total, I never would have thought I would have had a bulletproof vest in our rigs. The Our biggest terrorism training was the weapons of mass destruction training. What they're talking about now with these terrorism attacks, it's not going to be the big movie style bomb that gets blown up. It's going to be, the car that ran through New Orleans, and then you
Mm.
have 100-person MCI event. It's going to be assailants doing whatever they want, whatever nefarious act that you can think of as soft target. God forbid, a school, a hospital, a church, but there's soft targets in your community that you need to have threat assessments for. And I think we do a decent job here. It sounds like our county's kind of at the tip of the spear with some of the stuff. Um, but nationwide, it's kind of scary of what's going on.
Well, there's a lot to say on this topic. scaling back, anytime you have a group of people, people tend to people form groups based off of their ideologies, their thinking, like-minded individuals. And if you believe that, let's say it's a protest, peaceful protest to a city hall type of style, that's well within your rights. You can do that. The hard part is the bigger that we get, whether it's at a country level or at even down, scale it down to just a smaller community. Whenever you have a large group of people, there's always going to be somebody else that disagrees. And when that one person gets the idea of taking care of business, as they might consider it, that clashing just keeps going, and that tension, that divide and tension, just keeps getting stronger and stronger, as you're saying. And that could be one individual has just had enough of another group's ideology. It could or thought process, and that's what you see with like the car type of thing. That wasn't an explosion of type. It's not a lone shooter of any nature. That's just somebody mad about another group's opinions, and we just clash over this stuff. It's terrible, but we have to sort of prepare for these situations. Scale it all the way up to a whole nother outside entity disagrees with our entire nation, and they attack. It doesn't matter which way that ebbs and flows. It comes down. It always boils down to the same thing: two ideas that clash. Both sides could be as large as they want, could be as small as they want. It's the clashing of ideas, and that does kind of mess with our job as first responders, specifically firefighters, where we have to prepare for these things because there is triage, or there's building structures that are no longer stable. Our job, our main job in society, is to make sure society can keep moving along. We're a support service in the world, and that doesn't matter what country you're in. That makes it very, very challenging when we have to try to pre-plan something you haven't thought of yet. I didn't. Did you have the intern come around? Our department has an intern that is doing a little marketing thing.
She hasn't been around to our group.
So she asked a really interesting question. It kind of caught me by surprise the other day. I wrote down my answer. The question was, is there anything you wish the public knew about your job or about the fire service? And it's just like, oh man, the answer I gave, I wrote it down. Here it is. The dangers we face in the fire service are non-discriminating in nature. They do not care about creed, religion, color, any of that nature, even your favorite food. We train by imagining the unimaginable in order to develop methods and techniques. When the public calls for help, they expect us to have a solution. A large portion of our time, while not responding to calls, is spent doing exactly that. We may not always have the answers, but we need to be resourceful enough to establish that solution quickly and efficiently. I wish the public could see the amount of work that goes on in the background. This falls into that same category. We're talking about this now, but this is coming from a conversation we've had at work for years, and it's got a new flavor of the week, added to it. You mentioned vests on the fire rigs. I've never seen that growing up. The fire truck coming down the street, it was always the firemen get off, they check the fire hydrant, they say hello to my parents because they knew them. They might go and respond to a fire in the neighborhood. Actually, there was a dock that always burned off the river, and so they were always in the neighborhood, and every other house was like a firefighter for the city. It was cool, but that's my impression of that job. I don't ever remember seeing them get off with bulletproof vests and helmets, military style helmets, or what you'd see like the military use, Kevlar helmets. That is bizarre. And then fast forward, here we are, and we have those assigned on every rig, every apparatus. And that's not because we're going into we don't put those on to go into a fire. We're called to a very specific event in a support role. Often we're trained in the understanding that we'd be there as like triage and patient care to get them out of a sticky situation and transfer that care over to the next highest level of care, whether that's ALS units or directly at a hospital, and it's a crazy world we live in. We train on that almost at least once a month now.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little bit more ramped up in the last year. Special events come into town. It's not always about buildings or small, tight, close quarter facilities. Sometimes it's, PGA came to town one year and We had to train for a very specific, uh, viable threat that we can imagine in an open. You're talking at a golf course. A golf course.
Right.
What's your cover and concealment out there? It's wild. The landscape changes for our job.
And I'm not saying I don't support the training, because I think we do a very good job of what we're trained to do in that role, with the quick triage, stopping the bleeding, life-saving measures, and saving the people that should be saved, and obviously, making some difficult calls. I think as firemen have a better understanding of how to do that than the other two first responding agencies, police and EMS. So I don't discredit the training. I think it's valuable. I do wish we would do. I think we spend a little too much time on it sometimes. But what kind of spurred, it didn't. It still hasn't changed my mind. But I was dropping my daughter off at the high school on Saturday for something she had to do for her musical. And as I'm dropping her off, the high school in their field house, which is a massive field house, had an event going on. An event so large, which they didn't have the special police there directing traffic. They were using the school's security guards, and maybe some teacher making a couple extra bucks an hour for the weekend, directing traffic. And they had signs out. And I'm thinking to myself, we didn't know any event is going on at that school. So a school that is usually pretty much empty on the weekends now has probably over 1,000 people in this school. I mean, the field house parking lot was full. I counted at the time 3 buses in a lot, 3 school buses in a lot, 1 charter bus, and there's 4 other buses coming in at the time, full of students. And there's this, I'm not going to say a major event, but it's an event within our district that we knew nothing about. And a call comes in at the high school at that point in time. It could be just a fire alarm on a weekend. And the first due truck company, which we work on, that it responds to the high school, your mindset's a little different going to the high school at 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. It's a lot different than 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a school day, because the school's going to be full of, there's probably at least 1,000 kids in there, because each class in our district is almost 500 kids. The teachers, all the support staff, you're looking at over 1,000 people in that building during a school day. On a weekend, you're thinking maybe a janitor's in there, maybe someone else. You pull up and the parking lot's full. That OODA loop, all that decision making that you just have is now thrown for a loop. And it's to circle back to this terrorism and domestic terrorism and just situational awareness. I wish we did a better job of having relationships with these places that hold these events, that let us know that this is going on. Now, the sports venue that's up the street, they do a very good job with telling us what's going on. Every time there's a massive soccer tournament there, or a lacrosse tournament, or whatever's going on up there, we get to notify that, hey, this is going on this weekend. Usually we get to notify because they're holding fireworks or something, but at least we know, get to notify that's going on. Even with the facility across the street, when they hold their RV shows or their boat shows, that's bringing an influx of people in from around the state to look at these RVs and boats. At least we know that's there, because 90% of the time, or I would even say 99% of the time, if we were responded to that warehouse, we think it's an empty warehouse. But on the day that these shows are going on, you've just increased it tenfold, maybe 100-fold worth of people in that building. Not even to mention the fire load. I mean, just look at YouTube, some RV fires or boat fires. They're just fiberglass and plywood. they burn. So if there is a
Yeah.
fire, the suppression system in there, even though the suppression system in that park is really really good for what used to be over there, I don't know if it can handle 100 to 2 RVs going, or a couple hundred boats going at once. If God forbid there was a fire in there.
You just made me think of something. So I went to a conference last weekend at the state, and one of the things was, as they were discussing a whole different matter, I had the foresight to look up and figure out, okay, what exactly is our most recent population census wise, for our where we serve, our town and our county. So our just the residents. We're not talking about anything else but the people that live there. It's around 92,000 people, or I'm sorry, 29,000 people. Jesus, that's a big spike, right? And any given day, we can guarantee, just under 30,000 people. However, with the influx of people, all the businesses, all the schools, everything else, the people that ebb and flow in and out. That's the second time I've used that. The people that come in and out of the town, that can add on a regular day up to 20,000 people. That's insane. That's kind of wild. Now, when you get some of these events, like we mentioned the golf tournament, the PGA, that's not even in town. That actual PGA is not in town. It's on the other side of the county. But the staging and parking, essentially a giant park and ride, is nearby, and that fluctuates. One year they had it was up to 30,000 people extra in town. That's a huge change. Traffic is going to change. How these people are moving about, where they're eating, what they're doing. If they're some people like to drink, maybe you have inebriated people. You add all these extra challenges to the day, not just the regular service that you provide. So yeah, we do kind of have to know. We should be knowing about a lot of those things. You mentioned the soccer tournament. We're kind of secondary to that notification. Yeah, we do get notified because they've gotten in a groove to just say, hey, let's let the fire department know about this as well. But part of holding that tournament, they're required to have at least, I can't remember, it goes by a percent of people there that's scheduled to be there. But let's say it's 1 or 2 ambulances must be on site, staged there the entire time. Through that process, that also notifies us because the manpower and staffing changes, even through the EMS provisions provided. And we're part of that as well because we are pre-hospital care, EMTs and paramedics as well. We have to be part of that. So we get plugged into that, and then it just kind of becomes, hey, let's let them know every time. So that's a requirement for that type of that particular event. But if you had, like, let's say you had a comedian coming into town and we're just making something up. Let's say they go to the high school, they want to use the gymnasium or the field house because it can hold X amount of people. Are we required to be notified for that? But these are conditions that if, one of our members will say, hey, I bought this ticket to this comedian nearby, and our gears start turning. Hey, wait a minute, that's in town. Hey, wait a minute, that's going to be how many people are there? Sold out. So somebody starts doing the work and the math on this, and we might want to put some eyes on this event. That's how we learn. I think a lot of times, majority of the times across the globe and across the nation, we learn after the facts. We're not preemptive in anything. A lot of times it's reactionary. Oh, we had this event happen. Let's make sure that the next time it happens, we're going to act this way. So we're constantly like one step behind the process. And I have seen some change, at least in my short career, where we've started to be proactive. But it does kind of like you have this, you can't like go home and have this conversation at the dinner table and talk about like all these imaginary ideas. Oh, this event could happen. This condition can happen. It's, I remember one conference I went to, for instance, just for fire service, somebody said, hey, how many times have you burned a house down in your community as a firefighter? You're like, what? I'm not a firebug. I've never. And they're like, no, in your head. As you're driving by, you should imagine to hear this out loud was the most insane thing I've ever heard. But it's like, you should be imagining every house in your community burns and how you would deal with those conditions and talk about it with your groups. Oh, now I understand. Okay, well, what about that's real simple. It's in our title, fire department. So we start considering what is fire going to do to that event or that building or, whatever. Now we're talking about stuff that's not in our title.
Right.
It doesn't say terrorism response team assisting the local police agency or FBI department. It doesn't say shit like that. But sometimes we're called because we can help. And a big portion of why the fire service is called is, and that's what you're getting at, is that we were hive minded. We do work as a team, but you can't take one fireman out of the fire department and use just that one person at any given time. It only functions as a team, no matter if it's a small team or a large team, a small department or a large department. It requires everybody to be there and to work together. And that's why sometimes the fire department is pulled into that thing. Ambulances, what do you get? Max 2 people. So when you're looking at an event that you're planning to train for, it's kind of imperative. One of the roles is that thing rolls on its wheels. That's our transportation to hospital. So we're not going to put them in that first line of patient care and triage. We're going to put them right after triage and get them rolling, because that's a good portion of their job, is getting them to the hospital. Treating on the way, obviously, they're very, very good at that as well. But let's not put them up front where they might not be able to transport. Fire department can't transport. At least our fire department can't transport, but that ambulance can. The police agencies stopping that threat, or at least addressing that stimulus right off the bat, and the secondary roles and tertiary roles in it. That's how it all starts to jumble together.
Right. The last thing we need to do is tie up an ambulance crew doing patient care on these scenes. And I know we just, shame on me for not knowing, but we just changed the terminology for a mass casualty incident. I don't know, I forget what we call it. But just the other day, it was my group. We had a special needs bus, adult special needs bus, get in a car accident. And every single one, I shouldn't say every single, not everybody on that bus lived at the same group home.
Oh, man.
And everybody on that bus needed to be transported per policy. 6
Whose
ambulances.
policy?
The group homes policy.
Group homes policy. Okay.
6 ambulances were taken up. You take 6 ambulances out of our EMS system right now, it's on one call, it's going to crash it. Luckily, sorry, I was asking I was asking the ambulance chief what was going on at the high school yesterday. It was a color guard competition.
Oh, okay.
Which explains them being in the field house, which they're, a color guard, probably 20 to 25 people on a color guard team. I don't know if the bands were there with them as well, but it's an influx of people that we just didn't know about. But back to this group home thing, this is just a 2-vehicle motor vehicle accident. It took 6 ambulances out of the EMS capabilities of the county at that point. 1 motor vehicle accident. We had the bus crash last winter.
Yeah, the one on the expressway.
I don't even know how many ambulances went to that. There wasn't many that got transported. A lot of them signed off. Miraculously, there was only one or two major injuries. But your point to where we don't want the ambulance crews doing patient care because we need those ambulances to transport. God forbid something happens at these soft targets where there's a couple hundred people and we have over 6 people that need to be transported. Our ambulances are going to be transporting 2 at a time. I don't know how many ambulances are in service in the county. I know there's not going to be enough. There's never enough ambulances there is anyways right now with how
it seems like
healthcare is right now. And that's the biggest thing we always talk about is when we declare whatever incident we declare where we need the amount of ambulances we get, where are they coming from and how long are they going to take to get there? So that's why the fire department is doing what we're doing. We're the force multiplier, as someone calls us in other tasks. But going back to the sports facility up north in our district, they had a Comic-Con. Comic-Con's a huge thing. And there was parking in the lot. There was overflow parking across the street, and we went there. They overloaded some outlets. They were using outlets that they shouldn't have been using for. It was like a freezer for someone was selling popsicles or something, whatever it was. And we had a small electrical fire in the box, but we that building had to evacuate an entire. I mean, this is if you can imagine this building, it's one full soccer field on one side, two indoor soccer fields on the other side, and some hallways and other things. So if you imagine a couple thousand people had to evacuate this entire structure because of an overload outlet. And not only the evacuation of the people, but the parking and how everybody was parked, just getting the rigs in. Now, thank God we knew that event was going on there, so we were mentally prepared for the traffic congestion in that parking lot. But if we don't know that's going on there and we pull up and it's like, WTF?
Hmm. In how we position ourselves. That's another thing that often gets missed. We're used to going to the front door of the FDC or wherever. If it's like this is an alarm situation, going to wherever that panel is based off our pre-plans or knowing that ahead of time. You might be, because of that congestion, we might not be committing a rig to the same area that we normally would, just because of the amount of people. If we have to change up our positioning, we kind of don't overcommit to one location automatically. It's a tough thing. We might back it up, walk it in type of thing, which leads to apparatus placement on all of these events, whether it's a fire alarm situation, a fire, or it's one of these aggressive deadly behavior assignments. We change how we respond, but how it initially comes in gives us a lot of information that we can switch those tactics on the way, knowing which tactic and then selecting a different one, even though it's the same location, it's the same alarm, but based off the event that's happening, we might not use the same play in the playbook, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. It just circle back. You brought up picturing the fireman, and if I were to describe what a fireman was just growing up, it's guys in long black rubber coats, 3/4 length boots folded down with their
Yeah.
helmets on, riding on the side of a tiller truck, going down the road. Now you have, like you said, we're as some people would call it, kitted out with our body armor. The first aid kits that we carry with us, tourniquets and everything. I never would have thought getting on the job that this is the direction that we would have to go to.
Does get you thinking though. How, has it changed? Has doing any of this stuff changed anything that you do in your personal life? When you're
Person,
home, or you and your kids are going, let's say you're going to the zoo or the mall or even the market or something like that.
I think I've always been kind of had a good situational awareness of stuff like that before. I think it's just might have heightened it a little bit more with the stuff that my daughter does. It's dance competitions. It kind of seems like it is what it is. What are you going to do? Scare the crap out of them 24 hours a
Hmm.
day? I mean, they got to be kids. They got to live their life. But being dad, I got to be situationally aware for them. I don't want to say it's changed. I think it's just heightened it. I've always had it,
Hmm.
but it just heightened it.
I always kept like a first aid kit in the car, but it was always a couple band-aids and some gauze and some cling wrap type of thing. But even that has changed, in the glove box and or in the back seat, like in my truck or something. It's changed a little bit more geared towards, and it's not just because of this attack procedure that somebody might attack me or somebody might attack a crowd thing. It's also comes from a lot of the car accidents. We see the twisted metal and how people get pinned in a location and not be able to help themselves while waiting for a response. It's like just a dumb. It's not dumb, but it's the missus thinks I'm crazy sometimes. But I keep tourniquets in all the cars.
Yeah,
in
no,
all of
I
our
do too.
vehicles, and it's even in hers. She just got a newer one to her, and it's in both seats, both front seats. There's one within reach. It's a tiny little tourniquet that's just right there. So if you're pinned in your seat, you should be able to reach it with both arms. Is that a little extreme? If you coin it as like, well, somebody could attack your vehicle, or while you're in line at the McDonald's or wherever it is, no, 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 it's not that at all. It's just that if somebody T-boned you, you rolled over and you're pinned in your car, I mean, you got your legs bleeding or you broke your feet, if you need to apply a tourniquet, you can put that on while waiting for help.
Right.
That's it. Just small things. I've also been on hikes and stuff way out in the woods where there is no help and you might have to limp it back and you just want to be able to. So my first aid kit, as you look, doesn't look like the little Johnson and Johnson jobber that you buy at the, for $5 at the market and then put in your closet, your hallway closet. It doesn't look like that at all. But they're also subtle enough that you might not even notice it's in the car, but it's within reach of either the driver or somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, my backpack that I carry everywhere has the first aid kit in it, and I more or less, so I don't forget it. I usually just
Mm-hmm.
keep it in my car all the time, and it's got tourniquets, it's got gauze in it, just stuff to mitigate quickly a situation before help arrives, type of thing.
Yeah, small
And
stuff. It's
it's
not
fun.
enough to treat a crowd.
No,
That's
and it twice in 1 week, and twice in 2 days over last 4th of July. I had to end up using it because the Johnson and Johnson first aid kit with the little
yeah.
band-aids. The neighbor down at the lake, he was lifting up his jet ski hoist, and he slipped, and the jet ski hoist came down and gashed him in the head, real good. I mean, he went to, I wouldn't call it. It was more than an urgent care, less than a hospital, which is down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the only person that had gauze, the only reason why there was gauze there was because of the first aid kit I kept in my Jeep. So I ran up to the Jeep and got it and treated him and wrapped him up and got him to where, his bleeding was controlled. And then the same thing happened to my cousin. I think he sliced his foot on a boat cleat, or he needed to get super glued. But same thing, the band-aids weren't going to do anything for that, so we wrapped him up as best I could, and he went and got it glued back shut.
I keep that super glue in that kit.
Yeah.
That has been handy. That has saved me a lot of money going to the emergency room,
You
for
know
some
what?
stitches or going to urgent care.
We're sounding like EMS geeks here, which we're not. But you know what are kind of cool is they're new to me, and the guy in um,
Mm.
on my rig was like, "Dude, those have been around forever." Are those? They're like adhesive strips with the pull cord.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like they're like butterflies, but they're not butterflies.
Uh, yeah. The zip something. I know what
Yeah,
it is. Yeah. It looks like you stick them on and then it's like got a little zipper. So it seals it shut on you.
it looks like a butterfly bandage on, but then when you
Mm-hmm.
pull the little string, it's got to be some pretty strong string. It pulls your skin together, and it kind of, it's like a
Got a
high
bunch of those
strength
too.
butterfly. Yeah, I got to look into getting those.
They're pretty cool. We've always had like the old butterfly bandages
Oh yeah,
and everything. We got, I think my aunt was a nurse at one point for one of the hospitals. So she, "Oh, here's all the stuff, pulled some aside, acquired them from local stock, and they've come in handy. So my dad always said that was where it started. He always had some sort of first aid kit. He didn't always keep it in the car, but it was in the house. But if we went camping or we went out of town, it got transferred over to the vehicle, and away it went with the family. So
I mean,
all of
just
this stuff is like, it's beneficial to the individual and the departments to learn it. You don't have to go so crazy that it becomes your primary role, but it is good to pay attention to and at least know how to plug into it. Still not understand your primary objective in that moment or when you go back to other calls and everything, but you can take some of these things away as just an emergency preparedness thing. And by emergency I'm not talking tin hatter. I just hey, I realize this happens to everybody else that's on the road. I'm one of those everybody else is driving back and forth to work, whatever. Something can happen to me, so hence the little first aid kit.
my biggest takeaway from what we're talking about is I think we have to do a better job of building relationships. And I'm saying this to the fire service across the board. I know some departments do it really well, but just building a relationship with these places that can hold events and just say, hey, here's the email of whoever. If you want to put an officer in charge of it, if he wants to be a battalion chief, or it wants to be a certain line officer, or just go directly to the chief, and the chief can be the coffee filter and filters it out. What they should know about this. Yeah, this isn't really we don't really need to know about it, but at least start that conversation with these businesses and these places that hold these events. So when they do come to town, oh yeah, the fire chief wanted me to let them notify this going on, just for situational awareness. Um, I'm gonna attempt to make. I scheduled a tour at the high school this week, and the new security officer or in charge of the security is going to be with us, and I'm going to hopefully start that conversation with him. And this just the tour was already scheduled, but it's been burned in my head now since they had this event over the weekend and nobody knew anything about it. And like you said, the ambulance was there as a standby, but we
Hmm.
knew nothing. You know, uh,
Yeah, yeah. It's a pre-plan. You know, it's we're just adapting to stuff that we do already know as well. We pre-plan for all the businesses in town, but in case they have an alarm where that burns, something's burning there. It's the same thing, same process. We're just adapting it to a different situation. So it's not like the fire service is changing, completely flipping around and doing something that it's not. It's adding a little bit by using what it already knows.
yeah. To me, it's a little bit more personal now because I have one that's in middle school and two that are going to be, well, one that she's in middle school now. She's going to be in high school next year. And then I got two coming up through the school system. So I guess it's a little more personable to me now. Now I got kids in the system where those events happen, and I'm at them a lot. And I'm like, what would happen if you hate to play the what would happen game, but that's what you do when you're a fireman. What would
You
happen?
do, you do. And you can pretty much only talk about it at work. You sound insane if you Thanksgiving dinner. You're like, you're telling grandma about this. She
Yeah.
thinks you're insane.
Well, yeah, I
Um,
had the conversation with my wife. You know,
how does she take that? Is she receptive to stuff like this, or is she kind of like, I'm just gonna let him vent?
no, she's receptive. I mean, but she understands. I think she wants wants people to be safe. Well, our kids to be safe as well. So it's funny. She just had this is way off topic, but they went school shopping or sneaker shopping, and she had like this odd dude. And I got to give my wife all the credit for this one. She usually isn't this situational awareness is not her thing, but I think the mama bear skills came out that day, and she had the kids school shopping at one of the stores, and and she said this guy was just giving her the wrong vibes. He could have
Mm.
been completely harmless, but the 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 vibes were not right with this dude. And she hurried, kept the kids close. He kind of followed her to the checkout with nothing. He was in the children's section of school of shoes with no kids with him. He kind of was following around the store and then followed him up to the checkout. I can't remember if she told me if he followed her outside, but the way she had the kids get in the car instead of usually, getting in the van on both sides to get to their respective seats, she told the kids, get in on my side so I can keep an eye on you. So she only opened up the one door for him and made the kids file in the one side, and then drove off, which pretty smart for her. But he didn't follow her. Nothing happened after that. But I was
No,
like,
that's that's a healthy reaction to it. Like you
right,
saw something, remained calm, came up with a plan. So you said the OODA loop. It's exactly what happened.
yeah,
Something changed that she observed. She made a decision and acted on it.
yeah.
And that was it. Kids probably had no idea.
They asked questions a little bit, that
So
she
it's
had
not
to
like they were
explain.
rushed in. Like, all right, everybody, quick, get in the
No,
van.
yeah,
We're gonna
no,
go. It wasn't.
no,
Didn't freak them out.
right.
You know,
It was like, well, why do we need to get in this door? Why can't I get in the door I usually get into? It's those questions. And she had to explain to him what was, what happened. And
because I broke it. I said so.
right,
You
yeah.
know, get in the damn car. Um. So the community that I live in, I don't have kids, and a friend of mine is, I forget exactly what his position is, but he does help out with the emergency management board in the town, and he was asking me to put some eyes on the plan that the local school district has for. I thought it was specifically just for like an active shooter event, an aggressive deadly behavior event, but it actually was a lot larger than that. It was for all branches of it, all types of emergencies, and it was a big comprehensive plan. They were opening it public on a there's like a Wednesday night. They wanted question and answers, kind of like a town hall type of thing, but it was the school board presenting this. And as one of the emergency management board members, he's like, "Hey, you want to come up there and meet me up there? We'll just sit in the back and listen to what they got to say." And nothing. I'm like, it's kind of weird, man. I don't have kids. You want me showing up to a school? So he sent me all of the documentation ahead of time, and I read it, and it's actually beautifully written. Their plan and everything on paper. Whoever wrote this is either former military or some sort of like maybe a state trooper, boss type of thing. Like they know all this stuff. It references ICS, NIMS, NFP, like all of these big agency and guideline series that not everybody, I would not expect a school administrator to know of. This was written as if somebody is comfortable and familiar with it and did a great job of explaining every step. And it was a million pages, it felt like. But I'm like, man, this is well laid out. The only thing I had was the implementation to some of these things. You could tell there was a checkbox like the old kind of how they do the fire service surveys. Like, hey, this is your department A. If you have a collapse event in town, what is your plan for that? And you can go, oh, we can do it because we have guys, or we can do part of it at an awareness level, or we can do part of it at an operations level, or we don't have a plan. That's an answer too. We don't have a plan, and help develop a plan. Like, okay, that satisfies the collapse. And now you go to trench. Now you go to, blah, 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 and you go down all the series of events and what your plans are. Yes, no, somebody else, maybe, whatever.
If you want to know, that's called the Annex F in your town emergency plan.
There you go. So it kind of was built out as if they were doing that, but the amount of material, it wasn't just a checklist with a bunch of check marks and done. Somebody took the time to really develop a comprehensive plan. So I was kind of eager to go. So I show up on Wednesday night, and I think it was like the meeting was at 7:00, and I'm waiting in the parking lot. Here comes, there was also some other event, like a cheerleading event or something. So there's moms and dads and kids and all this stuff. And I'm sitting with my lights off in a dark car. I'm like, yeah. So I texted, it got to be like 15 minutes after the hour. And I text him like, yo, where are you? He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. I can't make it. I'm at work. I'm like, oh, you asked, so I drove away. I'm like, that is the creepiest. Somebody's got it on camera. His car sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes at a school with their headlights off. Like, to me, if I saw that would be one of those things I would clock as like, that's unusual. I'm watching people come and go. I'm getting some times down. It's a very specific time that a meeting is happening about an event for these type of things. I'm like, this is what this meeting's about, is the recognition and awareness. And I'm like, I'm proving it.
You almost
so I got
did
the
like
hell out of there. But
you almost. I mean, but
what are you doing, pervert?
Did you?
I don't know. I swear to God.
Do you know who put it together?
I do have the name. It's on paper somewhere.
Well, I mean, essentially, you just did, what do they call it? Like not a red cell.
The testing, but
yeah. I mean, you say, hey, I was here to sit for this meeting, and I sat in my, and the person I was supposed to meet with canceled on me without canceling on me, but I sat in a parking lot by myself, unchecked by security for however many minutes. You would hope like a security guard would have came up to you and said, hey, what are you doing here?
Yeah, not one parent nothing. And that's okay. It's a safe community, but I think a place that we designate as a safe community is even more should be more diligent than not, because they rely on that. Oh no, it's a safe community. We have that. We keep falling back to that, and that's one of those things where something's going to trip you up. You know,
It's
you're not active enough.
it's a safe community, but the one thing that they're talking about on that podcast that Sean Ryan did was they want to make their communities hardened.
Yes.
So he
Yeah.
lives in Tennessee. He goes, when I go to church, if you are not carrying in church, you're in the minority. He goes, you don't want to come into a church and try to start a problem because everybody carries. Now, where
Mm-hmm.
we live, it's a little bit difficult to do that. It's a felony to carry on school grounds. I mean, you can't even have it in your car technically. So
Mm-hmm.
when I go to pick up the kids
You
in
throw
the
it in the
school,
mailbox, or
right, yeah. But if I have it on me that day, and I go to pick up the kids and I forget about it, and something happens, you know, whatever, and I get approached, a police officer comes up to me and I get searched, and just happen to have it on me, and I'm sitting in the parking lot waiting to pick up my kids. That's a felony, and I'm legally allowed to carry.
mm-hmm.
But it's politics that we're not going to get into.
No, that's a whole different thing. There's still a preparation mindset behind that, and it's not to go and initiate some sort of tactics. It's really just for you to get out, right? As a civilian in that role, you're picking up your kids from school. You're just trying to come up with an escape route, but
Right.
not in like, get away from, remove myself and my children away, because that's the best protection you can offer. When we're clocked in at work, that's not the plan of attack. We're not there to be like,
No.
ooh, let's get my buddies. We're gonna get back on the fire truck and we're gonna get the hell out of
Right.
here. Well, it's the opposite role, you know. But I think that's about where we're at with the domestic stuff happening on the forefront. Things we're seeing. We're not seeing a lot of. It's not like stuff's exploding in the street and people are going wild. We do see it in the news. It does not happen as much as you would think it does. It does feel like it's ramped up sometimes, but just be aware that accidents can happen. We'll just say that in general. Accidents can happen, and have a plan, have multiple plans, but at least a plan of how to evade, how to get to safety. That's the best way to sum it all up.
And if and I'm going to say it again, if you're a chief officer or you have some pull in your department, get out when you do these pre-plans and build relationships with the school administrators. If you have, like, we have this sports, it's not like a major league sports venue. It's just a huge field house with, I don't even know how many soccer fields outside, but they hold a couple major tournaments every year. Build relationships with these people that have these places where there's going to be an influx of people that your community is not normally used to, and make sure they get those notifies to you so you can prepare for anything. Fire, major, just I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I mean, it was something as benign as the air show we had a couple years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like 95 degrees out, and the bleachers were on blacktop tarmac, and there was no shade. And what do we had a mass casualty incident for people dropping of dehydration. And I don't think there was enough ambulances there that day. And the the crew, the fire department was there as a standby, not for EMS. They were a standby for I don't know if it was the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds that year, but they were there as a standby for crash response.
Mm-hmm.
Then they ended up performing EMS on like 20 something people that were falling, passing out from dehydration.
Yeah, and part of their plan is to have us assist, and we're staged all the way around that thing. So for dual purposes, sometimes
Yeah.
we have to help out with the EMS component, but essentially we're there for that crash response as well, and that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, that's you mentioned like the fire chief or somebody that is doing this pre-plan on behalf of their department going out. It's we're not. It doesn't have to be just surrounded by one bad human or multiple bad humans doing bad shit to other good humans. It's as simple as if a fire alarm goes off in one of these facilities when there's a bunch of people. Think of how that crowd is going to react. Their response to that stimulus of the alarm going off or the event itself, and you coming in. You hear lights and sirens plus the alarms going off. That sounds, you know, when you're a kid and you're doing a fire drill in school, usually the fire trucks aren't there. But you hear the fire bell go off, everybody lines up, they go out the door and they follow their teacher and they go outside, stand in the lot, there's roll call and all that other stuff. And then, okay, we clear and come in. But this is children we're talking about. Same thing for an adults. Okay, you hear an alarm go off, you're like, this is nothing. But if you suddenly hear sirens ripping down, you hear multiple sirens ripping down the street, now you kind of go in a little bit of a panic. Okay, this isn't a drill. This is real. I got to get out of this building. Now I'm going to push and shove to get out of this building. Great, you got out of the building. You're probably going to go to your car. Now everybody's getting their car and they might be trying to leave the premises. You know, how many routes in and out of that parking lot are there? You know, for ours, the ones you're describing, well, there's technically two, but one entranceway into that lot. And that's everybody's going to funnel there. Cars trying to get out are going to funnel. You know, if it is an EMS, let's say a couple kids collide, bang heads in the back soccer field. That's enough to get parents excited. They start shouting. Next thing you know, you got a string of parents lined up and down the parking lot and the sides of the building. Everybody's trying to wave you, but turns out that the only people know where these kids are all the way in the back, but every parent's waving and pointing in different directions. Oh, they're that way, they're this way. What are you here for? The alarm's going off over there. There is no alarm. What do you do? Who are you? Get. Go on, get. People come out of the woodwork because they want to help, and that's also something you have to plan for.
We had a pretty good EMS call there during a soccer tournament, and it was on one of the farthest fields away, and we commandeered a gator to get out there because the fire truck's not going to make. We're not going to drive the fire truck all the way out there. The ambulance can. The new one is 4-wheel drive, but by the time we would have walked all the way back to this person having their medical event, the ambulance could probably scooped them up and got them back. But we commandeered a gator and we're taking this, and we just zip back there. But that should be in the plan. That should be in these plans that you have.
Should be. And working with the people hosting an event and saying, hey, if you are going to have this, you need to dole this information out to the participants or the parents, whatever it is, because again, going back to that soccer field, that last one all the way in the back, someone, little Missy breaks her leg and it's a pretty decent fracture. Parents or the people surrounding might think that they are helping by scooping them up, and now they're walking up, they're dragging them, they're walking them, they're all slung funny, nobody's stabilizing the neck, stabilizing the bones. You might be doing damage to that child or the injury more than, by bringing them out closer to where we would be arriving as well. That also needs to be part of the plan. See, we're not talking about mass casualty incidents. We're talking about one patient, but a large event, and people trying to help or think that they're helping could actually be impeding everything that's happening. That needs to happen as well. That's part of the plan.
Yeah, 100%.
So we got both sides of the extreme here.
Yeah.
Let's switch. We got another news. You said you had a recent fire.
Yeah, a small little job. Good job.
Want to talk about it?
Quick little job. Fire still under investigation, undetermined. Started outside in some garbage toters. Got into the siding. I think another 5 minutes, we would have had a pretty good basement fire going, because it actually, where it got up into the siding, he had probably 3 layers of siding on this thing, and it was 2 layers of asbestos and then 1 layer of the original layer was what's cedar shake or something like that, siding. And during overhaul, the sill plate and the box to the foundation was charred all the way through, and it started alligatoring on some of the floor joists in the basement. And I think 5 minutes, if that would have gone another 5 minutes unchecked, that would have been a pretty good fire. But The guys got on scene. I was working overtime on an engine company. They're all real good, all studs up there. Stretched the line quick, got water on the fire quick. Uh, Me and the guy that's assigned to the hydrant, while the guy on the nozzle was, keeping the fire was knocked down, but just making sure it was kept in check. We got a quick search of the house. The house was fire was knocked down. House was searched all before the next apparatus got in there. Walked out of the building, looked at the next company. I'm like, sorry, there's nothing for you guys to do. You wanna help vent with some fans?
So it's just a small fire.
Yeah,
Kept it confined. Trying
yeah.
to
It, ran,
pull
it
up
ran up
some notes.
ran up the ran up the siding. It didn't get into the eaves. Luckily, it did. It The fire was intense enough, and where it was located, it broke out a vinyl double hung window to a bedroom. But the quick knockdown, no extension of the bedroom at all, except for the couple melted blinds. But that was about it. Uh, the homeowners are very lucky. The smoke detectors alerted the homeowner. He smelled the smoke after the smoke detectors went off, and then heard some popping noises. Looked out the living room window, which was an addition, and saw the fire. Called 911, and we got on scene and took care of it pretty quick. I mean, that just goes to show you the importance of good dispatching or good call taking, how quick the call taker took the call, how fast the alerting system works in our firehouses. And I think most of the firehouses in our area use the same alerting system now. And just a quick turnout time, quick response time, geared up, ready to go, training on your hose packages and how to deploy them as quick as possible, and getting water on the fire as quick as possible. Instead of losing your entire house, they have they're going to get some new siding, some new windows out of it, a new door that I forced, instead of losing their entire house. I think they're still living in there because, I mean, I even there was a hole in the bedroom that we poked to check for extension. Other than that, I wouldn't even say there was much smoke damage. It was just that lingering smoke that kind of got trapped in the house from the window being busted open from the fire.
Amazing. That's I think we all imagine when we sign up for this job and we get amped up through the academy and our first few years and we're talking about the good old days and we're waiting for one of our times so that we can someday say the good old days. That image that what really happens is not always the same. It's not the shit you see in the movies. It's not crappy TV. It's the goal is to try and stop it, confine it. Let's get this thing eliminated and get these people back in the house. If we can get people to go back in their structure when they have a problem, that should be a great feeling. You are doing your job. It might not feel like you're fighting the giant, 2025, fire of wherever you are. It's yeah, I know we all want to go and play, but this is our job
Yeah, it's
is
community
to
service.
save this. It's 100%.
The probably the worst damage, besides the hole in the wall that we check for extension above the window and the hole in the ceiling that we check for extension, the worst damage that we did, besides what the fire already did, was our muddy boots tracking through the house.
Ooh, should have thrown a runner down. you know, that's okay. That can be cleaned. That can be fixed. That's not structural damage. There is a preamble there though that's kind of important to point out. Though you said the homeowner heard the smoke alarm,
Yep.
right? That's I think that's a big thing. We often we skip or we miss. We forget about. In our district. We do have a program right now. We have two people that go out and they help support that role of making sure that people's smoke detectors, CO detectors are working, and they will install them. And then we ourselves on all of our rigs, we have kits, and we do the same thing on calls. So whether we're called to an alarm that's not functioning well, we also prompt people if we're there for an EMS call or a lift assist, and we're like, hey, want us to take a look at that smoke detector? I know at 3 a.m, it's kind of like, we just want to go back and relax them in it, but
I would say
I think we
that
do a pretty good job with that.
I would say we have a pretty aggressive smoke detector install program.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's in the title. It's the Community Risk Reduction
yeah,
Program. We have specialists. There's two of them. We ourselves are part of that commitment. Yeah, it's pretty aggressive.
I don't, and you know what? The best part about the program is that it gives you a free pass to go into somebody's house and give yourself a pre-plan of that house without doing EMS.
Yeah, we're invited too. You know,
Yeah,
either we're invited, we cold, you know, you knock on the door. We do a cold call. It's called you knock on the door. They invite us in. We don't force our way into these homes and say, "Hey, let me see how this."
it's a program through the Red Cross.
Mm-hmm.
Sound the alarm, which will we'll target a neighborhood and we'll go door to door and say, hey, Red Cross is providing smoke detectors. We can either come in and check them if you need them. We'll install some new ones for you. um, the the smoke the detector did it on an outside fire. The detector sounded, it alerted this elderly gentleman, and the response time was, I think, under 4 minutes, and the fire was out in under 6 minutes, and primary searches were done in under 10 minutes. It was,
Yeah, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling that everything functioned and did its job from the device to the people. You know, that early indication. Imagine if that smoke detector wasn't there.
right. Or if
How
nobody was
long before
home.
that person, or if nobody was home? How long before that guy would have known if he was still inside before he realized his house was on fire?
And not only was he could walk, but he walked with a cane. So who knows how quickly he would have been able to get out if that smoke detector wasn't there.
Yeah,
And this would have been your textbook outside in fire. Fire started on the outside in the corner, and it couldn't even have been a worse place. It was in the corner of the original part of the house in the addition. And the addition had aluminum siding, and the original house had, like I said, the 3 layers of siding. It was 2 layers of asbestos siding, and then the cedar shake siding underneath. And it burned hot enough to penetrate into the floor joists of the first floor to where it was burning in the basement. But we knocked it down quick enough to make sure that none of that really extended. But if that smoke detector wasn't there, his bedroom was right. The elderly man's bedroom was right there where that trash can was.
amazing. So I've actually advertised the program through the Red Cross a couple times in the last few weeks, at least to two departments, saying, "Hey, you know, reach out to them and get connected." They have a grant procedure. They have the funding for it. There's actually the availability to help your community with these smoke detectors and CO detectors is there. And actually, a lot of departments don't utilize it or don't know. I think it's a great program. It does, if your department is a little stretched thin for time and manpower, it could add a little bit. So you'll have to come up with like a scheduling program in order to deliver this to your community. But these are free smoke detectors. You get them for free typically. I'm pretty sure all of them, at least the smoke detectors, you get for free. And then you can go out and install. The only thing that you have to do is do a little survey with the community member that you're installing that at, and that's just to support them. It's got nothing to do with like a census and they want to know how many people or any type of political. It's nothing to do with that. It just has to know that, hey, if we continue this program and we're finding there's more and more, for instance, blind people, okay, that are taking advantage of this program, then we need to change up and buy detectors that vibrate or give something. Well, blind people can hear the smoke detector, excuse me, so it'd be like deaf people. They have one that shakes, or they have one that throws this. It's
The
quite
strobes.
obnoxious. They'll the strobe light, things of that nature. They'll carry more of those on stock, or they'll purchase more on your behalf. You know, putting those out there is actually, I think it has changed our run numbers a little bit. It's at least changed it in the sense that we're notified early super early detection, such as this call right here. If it wasn't for a smoke detector, and I don't know the pertinence if this was one of ours that
I
we helped
believe it
install,
was. It looked like it.
I would guess because that's one of those neighborhoods that we hit, not hit, but we
Target.
sought out, said,
Yeah.
hey, that they need some help up there. Let's go cold call door to door. So I wouldn't doubt that. Um, Now smoke detectors are getting a little bit different. You don't have to change the batteries so often. They provide you with these 10-year sealed batteries. Might die at 8 or 9, but it'll last a long time without having to worry about people not switching the batteries every time the clocks change.
Even the CO detectors are that way now.
Same way, same thing. It's a great service to the community, and it gets you the satisfaction that if a job still makes its way through, that early detection is there. There still is going to be a fire, and you're still responding at the end of that call. You have a better chance of being able to go, hey, okay, house is back to you. You can wander. You can go back inside. Small fire, we took care of it.
Yep.
That is the ultimate feeling right there. Is it's not the big blaze, it's not the warehouse fire of 1972. But it is a fantastic feeling to be able to go, hey, you had a problem, we helped you solve it. Glad you can go back inside. Yeah, that's my little bit on that.
No, I agree with it. I mean, firemen want to go to fires and do what they're trained to do, but at the end of the day, we're here to save lives and protect property, and smoke detectors just help us protect property that much quicker when they work.
Yeah, I'll take that one step.
When the system works, and the system worked perfect the other day.
Yeah, and it's when the system works, and if there's a small failure or a place that you need to edit in the system, you need to realize there may be an opportunity for you to help mitigate that, change that, edit it, whatever, and fix that little bit of a broken tab. Get that process flowing nice and smooth. One of your guys, I think I mentioned it before, one of your prior guys, now lieutenant, he said the greatest thing, one of the greatest lines, he's got a lot of lines, of course. You're a public servant before you are a firefighter. No matter, you're a public servant firefighter, you're public, civil service fire. However you word that, you are a servant to the public, which means you don't only just do fire. You don't only just do police. When the public needs help, you have a duty to help them in any way that you can, even if it means calling another agency that's responsible for that or has better value in mitigating that issue.
I had this conversation with one of our new commissioners that came for breakfast, and I just had this exact same conversation with our retired chief that we were doing a favor for with his new position the other day. Said at the end of the day, you're a fireman, but we're the cheapest insurance policy there is. We never turn down a claim, and we respond to everything. I go, there are some days we might have to be an HVAC technician. There are some days we have to be a plumber. There are some days we have to be, we're taking a cat out of the drywall or whatever. Every time if someone calls 911, and if they're not committing a crime, or they're not having a medical emergency, which we're probably going to go to anyways for a medical emergency, but every other 911 call we go to, who do they send?
Yeah, it ends up coming down to
the
big
fire
red truck.
We're the catch-all for everything, anything. Even some of the crimes, when the police officers need a thermal imager camera, or they need a ladder to get up on a roof. I remember, this is years back, they had it was almost like a Mission Impossible heist of a GameStop at the plaza by headquarters.
Yep.
Across the street from Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
They somehow got on top of the roof, went through the HVAC system, dropped down into the GameStop, and then took all the product, took all the games and stuff or whatever they took from GameStop, and they thought they were still up on the roof because they didn't know how they got down. So the ladder truck had to respond to have and we didn't go up there and investigate. The officers went climb the ladder. They were knee knocking, and I don't think they're really used to heights, but they got up on the ladder and they did their investigation. I mean, not only did they had to make sure the roof was cleared of the people that did the nefarious act, but they had to get up on the roof to do their police investigation. And there's been times where we've been called where, a place has been held up, one of the stop and robs, and they hide out in the field. You know what I'm talking about,
I
across,
do. Yeah.
and they call us for a thermal imaging camera to look for this guy. And we are the catch-all for 911. Not if the dispatcher doesn't know where it goes to, it's going to the fire department, and we have to handle it. And thankfully, enough of us have been brought up or were on the job with people that had other careers. And we always talk about our favorite senior guy who used to be the HVAC
Mhm.
tech. I learned so much from him. And then there's, my brother owns his own HVAC company. So if I have a problem, I'll give him a call sometimes and let him know what I'm looking at. We're all, some of us like to do home DIY projects, and we can get away with, some minor electrical work. I can figure out some of the, I've done electrical work in my house, so I can figure out some of that stuff that's going on in the house. You were just telling you did a whole dog wash basin in
Mudroom.
your in
Yeah.
mud room. So
It's an everything room right
yeah,
now.
so you've been sweating, but you're not even using shark bites anymore. You're sweating pipes old school.
I am.
But I mean, just the plumbing side of that gives you knowledge of some of the jobs that we go to. They're not calling the police for that,
They de-escalate it.
but I mean, that's what our job is. We're the catch-all. We're not just, it. We want to go to fires. That's what guys want to do. They want to go, put their turnout gear on, push down a hot hallway, maybe someday make a grab. But what the public sees us doing is that 2 in the morning, their hot water tank blew a valve, and they want us to come stop that hot water tank from ruining their belongings in their basement. Or the dog gets up on the oven or the stove top and turns on the gas. They don't realize what that is, but they smell gas, and we got to go and investigate it at 2 in the morning because they smell gas. That's
Yeah.
what we're here for.
How many times do you hear I'm sorry to wake you guys up, or sorry to
Every
bother
time.
you guys. You guys are probably having dinner. Or you're probably having lunch. It's always something. Sorry to bother you. I don't know where that comes from. Well, I've never expressed that. I don't know anybody we've worked with that ever expressed that it's a bother. We love doing that stuff. It's not the big fire show, but we love doing that. That is our job. You call, we go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're sitting around training, waiting for you to call.
Right.
You
Exactly.
know, I don't mind. Sometimes I think there's a few calls out there that probably don't need to go because there is somebody else who does handle that better. But we'll go. We'll get that started and we'll give them a call.
Yep.
It's not a problem.
Yeah.
So
So I mean, about it for today. We're working on a couple. Still working on your buddy for the EV stuff, right?
yes, yep. He's a very busy guy. He's actually
Yeah.
got his hands in. Wears many hats in the community, and we'll get him locked down for that. But he's got a few recent developments in the EV world that I do think are worth discussing and talking about, getting that out there. He's trialed a bunch of tools that have been sent to him because of his program that he puts on, and some of them look odd as hell, and some of them are actually really, really cool. I think
Does he talk?
I
Does
think they have a
he
future.
does he talk the batteries too? Like,
Yeah. Yep.
so we just had this discussion, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves when we have him on, but I had the privilege to go to the FDNY symposium last year, and
Mm-hmm.
the whole first day was on lithium ion batteries. I think it was a lieutenant of a hazmat company that spoke first. Then it was this guy that has his own company that talks about lithium ion batteries, and then it was a captain or a lieutenant that was on the Maui fires, and he talked about how they had to dispose the lithium ion batteries for all the household solar, um, the the solar panels that the houses have in Hawaii, because everything's solar in Hawaii. And the discussion we were having up, the same engine company I got the fire with, I was on overtime another day, and we were talking about like your hand tool batteries. And he's like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I keep all mine in the shed because I don't want them to burn up." I'm like, "Your batteries aren't going to burn up." I guess the town he volunteers in had a uh, battery fire, started as a battery fire. I said, and the information I got from the symposium, and I want to ask him his opinion, is that American made batteries, so your DeWalt, your Milwaukee's, your Ryobi's, those batteries, if they're brand name batteries, go through so many testing in the way they're manufactured that they should not ever burn up. It's the batteries that you get from Timu and what's it, the Alibaba or whatever.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
construction of the batteries is what's making these batteries go into thermal runaway. My understanding was if you had a name brand battery, the battery must have been damaged. So, the electrician that uses the butt of the screw gun as their hammer damages the battery because they're pounding something in with it. Could have damaged the battery and put it in a thermal runaway. So I started, the phones are always listening. So then
Oh yeah.
our algorithm now was showing me days worth of lithium ion batteries getting blown up and on fire and stuff like that. So I got some questions for him. So when he comes on, because
Yeah. I actually can't wait for this one.
I keep my
This will
batteries in the
be
basement, so I never had a problem with them.
yeah. We're trying to just lock down a date where we can all get in the room together, or at least get him in the room. Because I know he does want to discuss a few things that kind of some props and all that. So more to come on that. It's going to be surrounding the topic's going to be around EV fires, or at least lithium ion, and we're going to break down the science behind it, what's actually happening inside that battery, and how that relates to the car fires and everything else. A couple natural disasters such as the Maui fire, and some experiences we've seen recently out there in the field. So that's our teaser. Look forward to that one. Hopefully, it can be the next one.
Yeah, it also had one of my favorite people in our county reach out to me. He said he would come on, and
Perfect.
we're gonna definitely have the explicit label on there because
Hit
if
the
he comes
delay. You
on,
guys got a delay button?
yeah.
That's good. I'm excited for that too. I'm glad you said that. Um, Man, that's gonna probably be a two-parter because he's got a lot of experience,
Yep.
Maydays, everything.
And we had a couple
Everything.
guys reach out on Instagram that want to come on, and I'm going to reach out, see if we can nail down a date for
Cool.
them. It'd be good to have some one. I think one already has a podcast, the Can Report, and another dude. He's got a couple articles out on fire engineering. He sent them to us.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be starting his podcast soon, so hopefully we can do a collaboration with both of them. Not at the same time,
Yeah.
but get them on, and I think it'll be
Yeah.
good for both of us. Not both of us, me
Oh,
and you, but both
yeah.
podcasts.
Both parties. Uh, that's awesome. So that means that this thing is generating some steam. Means people are actually listening to this thing. We're not just talking into the ether here. Um, it's community driven. It's because you guys are listening, and you are also sending in some replies, some responses, some questions, and a lot of this information comes from some of the things that you give us to talk about. It's not just because we like listening to our voices. I actually hate my voice. I hate hearing it played back. So this is annoying to me, but this is fun to do. This is fun to talk shop, and it gives us that platform to do so. And sometimes we've run into a lot of people kind of developed out of this response. There's a lot of people out there that have questions or want to talk about something, but maybe too timid, or their department has regulations on, you can't talk about this. You can't say this out in the public. Like, okay, that's fine. Have a wider band of discussion, and maybe you can bring something back to your table to outfit your department, or at least change headings and go in the direction you want with your operations. And the input that we've gotten and the comments back have been awesome, have been incredible. And we're glad we can help and we can share some of the things that you guys want to talk about if you cannot express yourself. So please submit anything you want, complaints, comments, questions. We have the email that's firefrom2windows@gmail.com. All right, all spelled out. We also have the Instagram, and that's just straight up at firefrom2windows. Got anything on the Instagram from us? Said somebody.
Nothing.
Just the recent
Yeah,
DMs
just recent
from.
DMs that we got.
Perfect.
Actually,
Perfect.
do you know Chief Haywood out in Buffalo? It's a good dude. I met him. His son is, I think, on the job in Memphis, and he started fine. I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, just your old man's a good dude. I met him teaching out there." And he's like, "Yeah, my dad told me to follow your page for good size up content." So I was like, "That's good." It
Good.
was good
Good.
feeling.
Good. We do these talk about timidness. It's funny because we get on here, we talk about all sorts of stuff at the county level. We do in the winter time frame. I think there's still 2 or 3 weeks left. Wednesday nights, it's kind of a lecture series, so it's usually limited, capped at about 2 hours. Anybody can come. Usually, people around the county, a lot of chiefs, a lot of firemen, a lot of new people actually come in. That's really cool to see too. And one or two of the instructors will put something on and to discuss a topic, and it could be anything from tactics to leadership to whatever. And it's hard to walk in. And I remember, they've asked me 2 years now, hey, you got something you want to talk about? It's like, hey, you got, look at this cadre, man. You got guys that got, 30 years, 25 years, all this other stuff. It's like, what do I have to offer? I do have a few things I do want to bring up. I'm just there in development stage right now. As we talked with Captain Egan from City of Buffalo, he does the same thing. He has an idea, he puts it on paper. Maybe he generates it into a platform. Me, I put it on paper. I actually make a class, and then I just never deliver it anywhere.
Yeah,
And I constantly turn it over. So yeah, it's really cool to see that happen. So with that, I got nothing else.
yeah, I got nothing. So
Nothing else. All right. So hopefully we'll get that next podcast locked down, get that out to you guys, and if nothing else, be safe.
have a good one.